in this video, we're going to be bringing everything together that we've learned in this unit and previous units to make a very simple app, which is a to-do list. Now, what we've learned so far, just to remind everyone, is we've learned about arrays, we've learned about iteration, we've learned about how to iterate through arrays. In the whole previous unit, we were learning how to use inputs and buttons and have users interact with web pages. So we're going to bring that all together now, because in the last few lessons, we were doing everything on the back end, right? It was all JavaScript. We saw everything in the console. Now we want to combine the two. I want to have a front-facing thing for the user, right? We want to have a web page that they can interact with, and then we can use the arrays on the back end and bring it all together. So we have our front end, our website, our back end, our JavaScript, and it's going to all come together now. So this app works as follows. Basically, it's just a to-do list. It's very simple. I'm going to put things in here like homework. I will press submit, and it'll just show up on a list. And that way, I'll be able to remember all the things I have to do, right? I have a to-do list. This is just an app that does it. So I'll just tell you kind of what we want to do here. We want to make this button clickable. We want to get the value of this input. And then what we're going to do that's different is whatever the value of the input is, we're going to store it in an array. This lets us manage a little bit of the complexity of apps, because now we could store all the information we're storing in this one array, and it kind of just makes our lives easier because we know all of this data is going to be stored in this array that we could access later. How nice. All right. Once we've stored these items in the array, what we're going to do is then iterate through that array and show all of those items to the user. I know that sounds like a lot, but we'll go through it right now. All right, the first thing we want to do is we want to get this button clicking, right? So I'm going to say this, let reference button. So let's reference our button. Now, I just want to say this, you do not have to write these things here, the comments. I'm just doing that so you guys can see what I'm doing. It just makes it more readable, but don't feel like you have to do it. All right, let's look up the ID of that button. It's submit, and I'm going to say let button equal document.query selector, and then we'll do hashtag button. All right, great. Oh wait, it's submit. What am I doing here? ID submit. Come on, Seagull. All right, then I'm going to add an event listener. Add event listener to button. Remember these things? So fun. We're going to say button.add event listener. We're going to listen for a click. And then we're going to do something a little bit different for this app. All right, we're going to teach you a new method of what happens when we click. Usually what we did was we made these things called anonymous functions. Now, another way you could do it, and I think we're going to do it this way from now on, is we are going to come over here, and we're just going to actually write the name of a function here. So I'm going to say add to list. And what this means is when I click this button, I'm going to run a function called add to list. All right? Now, obviously, we need a function called add to list, so we're going to say create function. All right? So here's where I create my function. I'm going to say function add to list, and remember it's the name of the function, parentheses, and then curly braces. And what I want to happen goes inside of the function, and for here, I'll just say your mom. All right, let's see if this works now, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So I have my to-do list. The first thing I want to do is homework. Whatever, I press submit, and you see your mom pops up. Now, that works because, remember, I reference my button, I add an event listener, and when I click this button, it says to run this function called add to list. Luckily, this function exists, and this function does the following. It just says your mom. All right. Now, like I said, why am I doing it this way? Well, first of all, I just think it's a little bit cleaner to do it this way. Second of all, I think we need practice creating functions. We still struggle with procedures and functions, so this will give us a little more practice on that. And three, I think those two are just fine. Let's stick with those. All right, now the next step is to get the value of this input and store it in an array. To do that, I will have to get the value of the input, which we know, and I also need an array to store it in. So I'm actually at the top of my code, I'm going to say declare array variable. And what I'm going to say here is let items, and I'm going to make an empty array as follows, right? So there's nothing in it, but I have an empty array to put things in. All right, now let's get the value of our input. So I'll go get the ID here. The ID of our input is item, and we'll just say this. Let item equal document.query selector, hashtag item. And don't forget, we have to get the value of this input, so I'm going to put value here. Now, it's good practice just to check, did I actually do this correctly? So I'm going to console log item, and let's see if this all works. Press play. I go over here. I'm going to say homework. Let's see if it console logs it out for us. Submit, and homework pops up. All right, that's great. Now, what I want to do is actually add this to this array. So now that I actually got it, I'm going to actually delete this console log. And to add it into the array, I'm going to use something called a push method. So the name of the array is items. Now, I just want to be clear here. Notice how this is plural because I'll be putting multiple things into this list. This is singular because it's just the one each item. Generally, you name your arrays plurals because there's multiple things in them, and your variables are singular. So items, the way I'm going to put this value in is I'm going to push into it. So I'm going to say items.push, and then what I want to put into it is item. And then just so you guys are seeing this, I'm going to console.log items afterwards. So check this out. So remember, I'm getting the value from the input. Then I'm going to that array, and I'm pushing in a new value called item. And then we will see what's in our array. Let's try it out. So we'll try homework. Press submit. Notice how there's an array now with one thing in it. Let's say I put sleep. Notice now that there's two things in the array, homework and sleep. Let's say I say cry. I press submit because who doesn't want to cry after they sleep, right? So it says homework, sleep, cry. And as you guys get the point, play with dog, submit, homework, sleep, play with dog. So it is pushing each one of these items into my array. All right, we're now ready, now that we have this array with all our things in it, is to actually put them on the screen. I want to add them to my to-do list on the HTML page. So, let me keep that there so we can always see that. Add array items to website. All right, now here's what we're going to do. We have to do our DOM manipulation. So where do we get, first thing we used to do is say, where are we going to put this? All right, and I'm going to put it here in the to-do list. Let's have that. So what I'm going to do here is come back and I'll say let to-do list equal document.query selector, and it was hashtag to-do list. And what we used to do is we'd be to-do list, or list.inner HTML. And, we could put the item there, right? That would be the old way of doing this. So if you saw here, if I did this, homework, right? That would add that there. If I put cry, it put that there. If I put dog, it put that there, whatever. Notice how it's putting whatever the item is to the HTML page. But what I really want to do is I want to just actually iterate through everything in this array and put each and every one there. So I'm going to do something very similar. So let me just comment that out for a second. And what we're going to do is actually iterate through the array and add each item to the screen. So if you remember iterating through arrays, I'll just say for I equals 0, right? I is less than items.length. So go through the length of the array, and I plus plus go up by 1. Now I'm going to put my curly braces because this is what's going to happen. And check it out here. Well, one thing I could do is, remember, I could just say console.log items. Remember that means this will show everything in there. So if I press play, if I put homework, I press submit, you'll see that it's actually console logging everything in the array. So you see how it consoles out homework, cry, right? So it's going through it. Now, since I want them to actually show up on the screen, what I'm going to do is this inner HTML business. So instead of console logging it, what I could do is this. To-do list.inner HTML is equal to items.I. Items bracket I. So this will put each and every one of these onto the screen. Now let's try it out and let's just see what happens here. So let's say I put homework. Okay, that shows up. Let's say I put cry. Now just cry shows up. Let's say I put sleep. Just sleep shows up. Even though all three are in the array, only one's showing up. And that's because it's changing the inner HTML to each one of these items. So whatever the last thing in the array is will be the last thing that it's equal to. To make sure that all of them show up, I'm going to put plus equal, and that will put all three up there. Okay? So check this out now. Let's say I try homework. Okay, that's good. Now let's say I put cry in my array. So notice how homework and cry are there, and I have homework and cry. But the problem is, notice how they're all smushed together? Well, what we're going to do is, let's put this inside of a p tag so they actually get put on top of each other. So I'm going to interpolate this into a p tag by doing the following. Remember, I use back ticks. Okay, and I'm going to interpolate by doing $, curly brace, curly brace. All right, let's press play. Okay, let's try this again. Homework. Submit. See, looks a little nicer already. Cry. Okay, nice, but it seems to be repeating itself. Sleep. All right, so if you notice here, it's good. See, they're all in the array. It shows all the things in the array, but the old stuff is still there. It never clears out. So like the old stuff stays and keeps adding to the list. So if I did pet dog, you see it just keeps adding. So it's homework, homework, cry, sleep, homework, cry, sleep. If you saw it by here, it would say sleep, pet dog. So really what I want to do is like actually clear out the list and then show everything in the array each time. Well, clearing out the list is pretty easy. Check it out. I'm going to actually bring this line of code back for a second. So to-do list.inner.html, instead of setting it to item, I'm going to set it to nothing. And what this means is that every time I click the button to add to-do list, it'll get the value, it'll push into the array, it'll get the to-do list like div, I'll reference it, and then I'll set it to nothing. After I've set it to nothing, basically I've cleared everything out, then I'll iterate through the array and add everything there. All right, we're getting pretty close, guys. So check this out. So I do homework. Good. I'll do cry. Okay, notice how homework, cry. It's because it's clearing out the old entries and just putting the new ones. I'm gonna put sleep. Homework, cry, sleep. Okay, a dance. Karate. And notice how this is actually now working. Pretty cool, huh? Right? So now what it's doing is it clears out the list and then it adds each item from the array onto the list. Now, this is pretty much the app, but let's add a little flair to this. Let's say I know that homework is super important. So I want to say if the user is doing things like homework or sleeping, then I want to make those special by like making them green or in bold, right? So they're a little bit more clear to the user. So remember, if it's homework or sleep, I really want them to notice it. So I'm going to kind of like, make it nice and green, and I'm going to make it bold. So the way I could do that is as follows. We could write a conditional statement. I could say this. Inside of here, my loop, my iteration, I'll say if, okay, items I is equal to homework, okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this, put it here, but I'm going to give this a class of highlight. Okay? And then I'll say this, else, if it's not homework, I'll just do the regular one where it doesn't have this class. So notice how if it is if it's homework, I'm going to give it a class of highlight. And then I will go to style.css, index.css. I'll say this. If you have a class of highlight, I'll say font weight bold, and I'll say background green. Okay. Well, actually, here I have a nice green over here, so I might as well use it. Oh, that's your lab. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna use a hex code. All right. So let's try this out. All right. So if I put sleep in here, let's see what happens. Okay, just regular sleep. If I say pet dog, I say this. Right. If I put homework, I do this. Man, why did that not work? Did it say homework? Okay. Class of highlight. Highlight. I gotta check my work. Highlight. Didn't spell it right. That's why it didn't work. Okay, let's try it again. Spelling matters. Sleep. Okay, cry. Homework. Please be special. And you see now this one, because it's homework, it has that class of highlight and it makes it nice. So I could say also like whatever, run, not important again. Only this one has that special one. Now I could do two, right? I could also do this for sleep. So I could say or, write this over again. Let's say if I'm going to sleep, then I will make it also green. So let's try this again. So remember, homework and sleep, very important. I want people to know. So if I'm crying, doesn't matter. It's on the list though. If I'm sleeping, oh, that's green. If I am running, Not so important. Who cares? If I'm doing homework, that thing is green. So you notice here that now I'm recognizing and I can make decisions in this loop, right? And I'm selecting if that thing is homework or sleep. I'm going to make it a little bit special. If not, not special at all. So great. Now I have my to-do list working. I've managed some of the complexity by putting in an array. And this is a kind of nice and clean way of coding my to-do list. All right, it's your turn. You're going to be making your own app now. It's called Gradely. It'll look like this. You'll read the instructions and make something pretty cool. All right, that's it for this video. Good job, everyone. I'll see you on the flip side.